Hey, this is Tyler with TJX Survival. Blah, 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 blah.
One more time.
Hey, this is Tyler with TJX Survival, and I am lucky enough today to have Nicole Apelian here talking to us about knives and survival and bushcraft and all sorts of cool stuff. Hello, Nicole.
Hi, Tyler. How are you today?
I'm good. All right, guys, so stay tuned. So, a lot of you guys know who Nicole is from the Alone show, and if you don't, you should fix yourself and go watch that show. Now, for me, I kind of want to know more than that. I want to know who she is, where did she come from, how did she get these awesome skills. So, Nicole, who are you? Where did you come from? How did you get these awesome skills?
Well, like a lot of people, I grew up just being outside all the time. My stepdad was a real big influence. He would come home early from work and we'd go take the canoe and go to the beach and take our field guides, and I was always exploring. I had a bug collection and a nest collection and a shell collection. I was that kid who would never come indoors, and you know, my mom would have to call me when it got dark to just come in and eat. So I was always from day one off busy outside and just loved being there. And I think that sort of early nature connection really spurred on the rest of my life. And I went into biology, and eventually that took me to Africa. And I spent a lot of time there living in the bush. At first I went with the US Peace Corps, and when I was with the Peace Corps, I was a game warden for the wildlife department. And that was a great gig. And then I loved Botswana so much, that's where I was stationed, that I ended up staying on there and doing lion research, which put me in a bush camp in the middle of nowhere with my research partner, sometimes by myself, and really living in the territory of everything else: lions and elephants and black mambas and leopards and buffalo and things you really had to be aware about. So that really deepened my connection with nature, and also made me be superbly aware of the language of the birds and what they were saying, and open my senses and really get to know my environment, because I was living in their territory. And that really sort of sealed the deal for me as far as being connected. And then later on, I started working with the Kalahari Bushmen in Botswana, and their connection with nature is outstanding, and their tracking skills and their nature awareness and bird language skills, and then their sort of hard skills: fire, ethnobotany, food gathering, hunting, trapping, all of that. And they were a huge influence on me. to want to take those skills that I'd learned in Africa and hone them back here in the Pacific Northwest where I live. And then I started going to primitive skills gatherings, taking classes, reading everything I could, and really putting a lot of dirt time in. I think dirt time can't be underestimated. You can read about things, but the time you spend outside really doing things full time, that's what's really important. And now, now for a long time I've been teaching in primitive skills gatherings or traditional skills gatherings, whatever you want to call them, in a number of different areas. And I'm still learning every day. So I love being outside, and I love applying these skills, and I love learning more every single day, and I still do. So that's a little bit about my background.
Okay, well, I'm obviously a major fan of primitive skills. So I'm kind of interested in that, and I think a lot of the viewers would be very interested in what is primitive skills and where can they go to learn this as well. Is there any books or gatherings or things that they can check out so that they can acquire these skills as well?
I get that question a lot. That's a great question. There are, so you can call, I think a lot of them are now calling them ancestral skills gatherings or traditional skills gatherings to try to take that word primitive away, though a lot of us still use that, because they're skills that all of us have in our history. And you can go, there are gatherings all over the United States, in Canada, I'm sure all over the world. But if you're living in the States, you can actually look these up online. There are many links. I can post some on my Facebook page, Nicole Apelian Survival, to links to some of these skills gatherings. There's links on my website, NicoleApelian.com. If you go to resources, there's a whole section of links to skills gatherings around the United States there. And books, yeah, any books you can find, any bushcraft books or wilderness living skills books. There's plenty out there for people to read about things. But really, it's getting out there with someone who knows more than you do and being able to soak up their knowledge. I think that's the most important thing, is to allow yourself to be open to learning these things and to get out there with people who know more than you and share skills and just put that time in. So.
Okay, so what I'll do is I've got a discussion box below the video, and I will put a link to your website and all of those references down in there, and then a couple book links. If you want to send me any, Nicole, I'll put them down there for people to check out, and that way they've got a reference right now to go check that out.
Great, I'll send those to you.
Something that I really want to address, because this is a question that I get a lot, is women in survival, women in bushcraft. They're going to have different needs than men. They're going to have different hygiene needs. They may have different dietary needs, and they're going to have different desires when it comes to the way a backpack fits or the way a knife fits. So I definitely, being very knife heavy or very knife interested, want to talk about knives. Can you tell me about the one that you chose on the Alone Show?
So I worked with a knife maker whom I've known for a long time. He's very talented, works out of Southern Oregon, named Ron Macy, and we decided to go with a custom knife. I'd seen a bolo kukri knife that he'd had. We were teaching together at a gathering, and I really liked it, but wanted to alter it a bit based on what I thought my needs would be on Vancouver Island. So this is the knife. This is the sheath. It's a side sheath, which is nice because it fits like this, so it's not bouncing against your leg. It's a side sheath, so it has a nice, easy draw. This is the knife I brought. You can see it's quite long. I had to ask a lot from one knife. This is not my normal everyday carry. This is specifically for Vancouver Island, though I also use this very often when I'm out on my property. My everyday carry is something small, just a small bushcraft knife, Puko, Scandi grind, Sasha knives, very simple. When I was out on the island, I had great needs. I needed a knife that was very forward heavy, which this one is, for batoning wood, cutting debris really quickly, making spears, all of that. So this needed to be weight heavy because the wood there is so wet that the batoning needed to be very clear. I needed to be able to baton that wood. Now, the other thing that this knife gives me, if you look at the curve of this knife right here, it's a draw knife. So this was also very useful out there on the island. It has a squared off stem here, and that's great for, in case I'd lost my ferro rod striker, I was allowed to bring one, but you always need a backup. So this was great for a ferro rod strike. Now I also wanted it to be able to do some bushcraft work because I didn't bring a small knife. I only brought this. So what I ended up doing is, or what Ron ended up doing is making this grind here a lot thinner than the grind here at the edge, which is very thick, so it's forward heavy. So this is for finer work. And I actually was able to do small carving. For example, I carved a classic 4-pronged spear out there, almost right, very early, because it's a great tool to have. And this was able to actually do that fine work for me. The other thing I needed was something to be able to gut, and also just in case for protection. Luckily I didn't need it out there, but you never know. So a nice pointed edge here.
Chop a bear.
You never know. You never know.
Your fish.
Yeah, or that cougar comes behind me and, so I have this nice pointed edge, and this was also good for gutting. So this is not, if I was going to choose a gutting knife, this would not be it. It's so long, but I was able to gut fish and things with this knife very, very easily. The salmon and the rockfish and the dogfish and all the other fish that I caught out there on my lines and in my net. So this was able to take care of that. Of course, it's full tang, as any knife should be. He made it lighter in the handle. It's got a maple handle. It's lighter here so it doesn't weight my hand down too much, even though it's quite a heavy knife. And also this fine work, I could do feather sticks and things very easily, and that was important to be able to make sure that I could do feather sticks and things along those lines.
So a lot of people argue that there is no ultimate survival knife. A lot of people argue that there needs to be one small knife, one big knife, or that one small knife can do everything, one big knife can do everything. I want to get your thoughts on, can you take just one knife and do all the skills? If so, does that mean you have to learn more skills, or how to use a big knife versus a small knife? What's your thoughts on a one ultimate knife survival solution? Is that ideal, or is that just something you may find yourself in?
I think it's more, in my case, if I could have had this and my bushcraft knife, I would have taken both. Hands down, definitely. This I would have taken instead of I didn't need my axe with this knife. I shouldn't have taken my axe. I should have taken a small knife. Sure, you can go out with one knife like I did, and I used this knife for 2 months straight, and I didn't need another knife. This knife could do everything. If I had a choice in the matter, would I have preferred to have a smaller knife too? Definitely. So I prefer to have a small knife and a larger knife in order to do all that work. Is it necessary?
Okay.
No, it's not necessary. Yeah.
So you can do it, but it's not ideal.
Exactly. You can do it, but it's not ideal. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, as far as knife sizes, I know a while ago I did some filming with the boss, the Boulder Outdoor Survival School, and Kirsten Reckness used a very large Bark River Golok. And she loved it because it was lightweight, but it was also large enough to chop. I know from a survival situation, you got to be really careful not to be using heavy tools because it'll exhaust you. What do you suggest a female look for in a, quote, large knife?
See, that's a great point. You need enough weight in order to have, that forward heavy weight, so you're able to baton well without actually straining yourself. Because the heavier the weight, for example, for this knife, it's lighter in the handle because this has been hollowed out some. It's lighter here, and it's only heavy in the forward area. So I can baton well, and it actually takes less energy because the weight of the knife does the work for me. So that's really important, is the way that the weight is distributed in your knife. And a lot of large survival knives are thick all the way through. And so you're right, that's going to exhaust your hand. But if you have the weight only forward, that's going to make a big difference because you need less chopping power in your arm and you get more chopping power out of the knife itself. So that's an important point. Also keeping it sharp helps with that too.
So if you're looking for a knife that's not going to exhaust you, but it's still lightweight enough that it's not going to be heavy to carry, what characteristics specifically should people look for?
I'd say weight forward, thinner in the handle in here.
Kukri type design, maybe.
This is a kind of a cross between a kukri and a bolo. I like the design of this particular one because the chop, especially for someone who's not super strong here. Having this weight forward and having this style definitely.
Even if you are super strong.
Well, even if you are.
I'm honest. It's been my experience sometimes. Military soldiers in the backcountry, they're incredibly strong but incredibly well fed. You take their food away and they just shut right down. So even if you are some big buff monkey dude, you should. I would even argue that it would be a good knife for a guy as well.
Oh yeah, Alan from season 1 took a kukri, and he loved it. I mean, hands down, I think he would take it again if you asked him. Is my guess from what I've heard. I would take this knife again if I was going to choose a knife again. This would be it, hands down. Now, the other thing that's important though is to remember is muscle memory, right? So before I went out with this knife, I spent a month using it every single day to making feather sticks, chopping with it, doing fine work with it, draw knife with it. I've used this knife every day for hours a day before I went out so that the muscle memory in my hand and in my arm would be there. And so then I don't get as tired using a knife like that. So that was really important as well. Practicing using your knife and not just leaving it on the shelf is also really important. Don't only use it when you're just going to go out for the bush for a week. Make sure you're practicing with that all the time so that you do build those muscles up. Yes, if you're in a survival situation where you're getting hungry and you're losing muscle mass, it is important that the knife is not going to be too heavy and overwhelm you.
Some of the characteristics, I think we covered it a little bit, but I know people are going to be curious. What grind type does that knife have?
This is a convex grind. Now, my normal carry is a Scandi grind. This one's a convex grind, and I really like it. It's very easy to sharpen in the bush. You don't have to worry about angles. There's a lot of steel behind that, so you're not gonna wear it out by grinding it down over time. It's a really strong grind, and just plenty of steel behind that cutting edge. And you don't need expensive sharpening equipment. You can sharpen it in the field without any worries with this particular grind. It's flatter. This one's flatter near the inner part for finer work. And different and thicker down here at the end for the batoning work. So it's a convex grind that differs throughout the length of the knife. But I really liked this grind for my time out there. It worked well for me, and I was able to sharpen it by honing it on my leather belt, and then when it needed it, using river rocks from the river. So perfect choice. Yeah.
Okay, so if someone is in the backcountry, if they have the ability to plan, what would you suggest they use to sharpen? And if they don't have the ability to plan, would you always use a river rock?
Oh yeah, if you can bring a knife sharpener, bring a knife sharpener. There's always a knife sharpener in my go-to bag. Yeah, use that. That's what they're there for. It's much better than finding that perfect river rock and, taking the time. And it's hard to find that perfect rock out there to make sure you're going to get a great grind. I'd say always wear a leather belt with a tail on it, so you have that tail. And if you want to put some sharpening compound on that, even better. We weren't allowed to do that for the show. I just used my leather belt with a long tail, but I was able to strap it on that and keep it honed pretty well. In the field, bring a sharpening stone. It's a great tool to have. So I would say don't skimp on that. If you're in a situation that you're out there for a while, your knife should be sharp enough when you go out that it should last the whole time that you're out there. Should you damage your knife, should you find yourself in a survival situation where you need to sharpen your knife in the field, or you're out for a long period of time and you don't have a sharpening stone, that's when you go to things like river rocks. And it's good to practice that every once in a while just to make sure you have those skills. But in general, bring something to sharpen your knife with. It's going to be much better. But in my situation, I had to use river rocks, and they worked for me.
So you talked a little bit earlier about not needing a hatchet. I like to cover minimal and maximal gear. What I mean by that is oftentimes when you're EDC carry, you can't carry a hatchet and an axe and a saw and all this type of stuff. So if someone had to carry the minimal amount of gear, would you suggest they carry the bush knife? Would you suggest they carry the larger kukri bolo type knife that you have? And what is the maximum amount of gear? At what point do we get to where we just don't need it? Would you say a bush knife, a big knife, a hatchet, a saw, all that? Where's the range between the smallest amount and the maximum amount in your opinion?
Well, this is just for me. We all differ in how we use equipment. But in my particular case, I didn't need a hatchet or an axe out there. It just wasn't needed with this knife. This knife worked as a hatchet for me. It worked really well. I did not use my axe. So for me, the minimum carry would be this. If I was going to bring one thing, I would bring this. Now, that said, a saw was invaluable for me out there. I used the heck out of my saw because I had to cut firewood after firewood after firewood. I cut so much firewood down because, you know, I needed to have a fire going every night to cook my food. And I didn't need to boil water because I had a rain catchment system. But as far as, you know, cooking food, that was important. So I would say if you can carry two things, you know, carry a knife like this and carry a saw. If you only are going to be able to carry one thing, I just go for this knife, and you know, you just take wood that you find and you put it in the fire and burn it down as it goes through, and do your best with that. So
I kind of do. I really want to cover the knife in depth, but I do want to ask a little question while you bring it up. Some people got sick drinking the water. Some people didn't. In that area of the world, how do you collect water if you don't have any way to purify it?
Well, it's pretty easy actually. I only boiled water the first 2 days because then there was enough rain that I didn't need to boil water anymore. Day one, I set up a water catchment system with my tarp. And right off, so if you look at my shelter, there's 3 feet of debris on the top and on the sides and on the front and all around. You can't see that because there's a tarp over it. I didn't just have a tarp top, I had a thick layer of debris, and then that tarp was over the top, and that went into, I made between a log and the end of my shelter, I made a dip, and I made a big water catchment system that I weighted with rocks. And so I was able to have fresh water, clean water all the time. Rainwater's clean, so you don't need to purify it in any way. You can also take, if it's raining a lot and you're, let's say, walking through and you don't have a catchment system set up, you can take moss and squeeze it into your mouth. You cannot just pour water through moss and drink it. That is not okay. That was, I think, done in season 1, and the guy got really sick. You can't do that. But if there is moss, you can squeeze it and put it in your mouth, and that's a nice clean resource of water as well. Some of the water up there for people was clean enough to drink straight out of the stream. In my area, that was not the case. There were so many animals in my water, I wouldn't have felt confident drinking that water straight out of the river. I feel like that might have gotten me sick. So water catchment in a rainy area is a great thing. It's very easy to set up, and you've got your water supply there for the rest of the time you're out there.
So would you argue that it's kind of a bit of a probability, you're taking a risk that there's a high probability you'll get a sickness from animals crapping in the water versus a low probability? You kind of have to just make a judgment on that, or would you always boil?
On that, you know, I know some of the guys from the show that were there, you know, for a while had areas where they felt they could drink the water straight out of the stream because they had an area that they weren't seeing a lot of animal sign and it was clean enough, and that's a very clean area, and they didn't get sick from that. So in that case, great. That was great for them that they didn't have to boil water and they could drink it directly out of the stream. I didn't have that case at my site, so at my site I felt the need for water catchment, which was an easy thing to do. So I didn't have to worry about water. It's a judgment call. So.
Okay, excellent. So about that knife, would you suggest people buy it?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it's fabulous. It is custom made.
Yeah.
You know, it's it's one of the things I really like. I also like the material out of this knife. It's 5160 carbon steel, and you know, I live in the Pacific Northwest, and I don't like to use stainless steel, even though it doesn't rust, because it's so hard to sharpen in the field. You know, if it gets dull, you cannot sharpen it in the field. It is just about impossible. And 1095 is great, but it does rust fairly easily. 5160, I mean, one thing I like is it's that springy steel, you know, leaf springs from cars are made out of this stuff. This is actually what this is made of. This was a leaf spring of a truck. And this is springy steel, and I knew it wasn't gonna break on me. And that is so important, to know that your knife's not gonna fail you. And it also has a higher chromium content. So it also tends to rust less quickly than 1095 does. And the main thing is you have to keep it oiled. I had some pemmican with me, and I kept the moose fat from that pemmican and used that to oil my knife. So very important to keep it oiled, but you know, that presence of that additional chromium alloy really helps with corrosion resistance. So I like the material of this knife.
So I know what pemmican is, but I know the first question I'm going to get in my comment section is, what's pemmican? So can you tell our viewers what pemmican is?
Sure. Pemmican is like, it's like the ancient Cliff Bar. It's a mixture of dried meat, fat, and then 5 to 10% berries, dried berries. And it's just a wonder. It keeps for years, and it's a very, very high calorie food. So it's one of the items that I brought with me. I brought 5 pounds of pemmican. Mine was caribou meat, moose fat, and then a mixture of sort of Arctic strawberries and a few other things thrown in. And it lasts for a long time. It doesn't taste amazing, which is good because you don't eat it all at one sitting. It's really easy to ration out as well. But it lasts forever. So it's a great carry to have and something to always have in your go bag, for example.
So would you consider it an ideal survival food, or maybe an ideal food to put in a bug out bag? I mean, how long does it last? Is it something that can be left in a trunk, or how do you store the stuff?
Lasts for years. Just wrap it tightly, seal it, and it will last for years. Stick it in your bug out bag and forget about it, and you'll have it if you need it. It's also great to bring along if you're on a long trek. Again, high calorie food, gives you fat and protein with a little bit of carbohydrates from the fruit in there, a few sugars. You can add something to it like honey if you want to boost up the sugar content. But it definitely is, in my opinion, a really great survival food. And that's been going back for, eons. It's not my invention. People have been using pemmican for a really long time. It's tried and true. Yeah.
Yeah, on a side note, and I think this is probably the most interesting story I've heard about pemmican, they found some pemmican in Egyptian tombs and were able to eat it without getting sick. Not that I suggest you eat food that's that old, but that kind of is a testament to the ability of pemmican to last for a very, very, very long time.
Yeah, that's a great testament to its ability to last for a long time, yeah. Yeah, it was a great choice for me. It really was.
Okay, so I want to ask you a little bit before we wrap up. Skills. I constantly get questions about what skills do I need? What's the most important skill? Where should people start? What's the path they should take? And where should they end up if they were to create a lifeline of, I just started in the bushcraft world. What should I work on first?
That's a great question, and I get this all the time too. First of all, read. There's so much great information out there. You can read about these skills, and just to get some of the basics, sort of in your head, there's lots of YouTube videos out there as well, but nothing compares to dirt time. So getting out there and doing it. Take a buddy, go by yourself, and tell someone where you're going if you're going somewhere far, and get outside and practice those skills that you've read about. Take some classes. There are lots of these primitive skills gatherings or ancestral skills gatherings around, and they'll be posted below in the comments. There are plenty of good teachers out there if you want to take a class. But really, I think the most important thing is hands-on learning and being open to, just going out and taking a field guide with you and starting there and figuring out, what track is that. There's a lot of value in you figuring out something yourself rather than someone telling you what it is out there. Does that make sense? Like, you figuring out a track makes you remember it so much better than someone saying, that's a mountain lion track. But the fact that you've looked at that track and gone through and said, oh, there's no claws showing, it's kind of a rounded shape, it's got 3 lobes in the back. This is all of that, and measuring the size and the stride. That will teach you so much more than someone just saying, that's a mountain lion track, and you're saying, great. You really have to figure these things out in your head yourself. And by doing that, you'll learn. So that would be my advice.
Exactly. So nothing beats dirt time, right?
Nothing beats dirt time. Get out there and do it, and you can start in your own backyard. So
I'm kind of wondering, what are some of your future plans? Do you teach? Are you planning on teaching? Have you got any new books coming out or any new videos or anything?
Yeah, I have a YouTube channel, and you can find it under my name, Dr. Nicole Apelian, and I'm starting to get some more videos out on that. I teach at Prescott College. I teach part-time in their graduate school. which is great because it kind of just keeps that little academic side of my brain going. So I continue learning in that department. I teach at these traditional skills gatherings, and I also, if you want to bring me in for a class, just give me a call and or email me through my website, NicoleApelian.com, and I'm able to come out for classes.
So are you going to be this year at a gathering called Rabbit Stick?
All right, so I will be at Rabbit Stick this year, and I'm not sure what I'll be teaching yet, but I'm sure there'll be plenty of there's lots to learn out there, and there's going to be a lot of great instructors there. So yeah, definitely sign up for that, and a number of the Alone cast are going to be there this year, so it'll be a great gathering
that's
to
good
go
to
to.
know. Yeah, I'll see what I can do to get up there and do some filming, and maybe if I'm lucky, we can get you guys together and talk bushcraft survival and all that type of fun stuff.
That'd be great. Yeah, that sounds wonderful, Tyler.
So I will do very hard to make sure that I put links to all of these gatherings, all these books, all these websites down in my discussion box. If there's something I'm missing, please go ahead and leave a comment down on the bottom. Nicole, would you like this video on your channel?
Yeah, I'd love this video on my channel. Thank you so much. That would be great.
Okay, so we'll put this on both channels. Be sure to subscribe to her channel, okay? I'll put a copy of this video on her channel, and make sure, if you haven't already, to subscribe to mine. If you have any questions for me or her, leave them in the comments section. I'll monitor her site, she can monitor mine, and we'll reply back to you. And if you want to see more videos like this in the future, let us know. Give me the topics you want to see, and I will get together and we'll do more videos. And thank you, Nicole, for taking time to chat with us, talk about your knives and your experience.
Oh, it was a pleasure. It was so much fun. I love talking about my experience out there. It was such a blast, and yeah, I love talking about this knife. It was really fun to chat with you today, Tyler. Thanks so much for having me on and for having this conversation. I appreciate it. So.
Excellent. All right, guys. Hit the subscribe button on both channels, and thank you for watching TJack Survival.